My name on the door faded while I watched it. The marker bled gray and then sank into the wood. The machines hummed wrong. Too high, like they fought each other. I set my hand to the door and the grain felt damp. The letters smeared. I wiped my hand on my shirt and left a smear there too. I wrote fast. Name. Date. The cabin. The lake. I pressed the pen hard so it would cut the paper. It didn't matter. By the end of the line, the first words went pale. My M broke apart like dust. I tore the page out and taped it to the wall. I said my name out loud and the recorder blinked. The red light stayed solid for a second and then started to pulse. I said, "Listen. If you're me, listen." That felt stupid, but I said it anyway. I had to anchor something. The clocks didn't match. The one over the sink said 3:07. The one by the bed said 1:54. My watch was stuck at 2-something, but the second hand jumped and then slid back a notch. The little travel timer by the microscope had frozen on 0:10, like it was waiting. Every time I looked, it went warm in my hand, like it just came from the sun, but it still read 0:10. I put it down and heard it tick once like a hiccup. I don't have a lot of time. I wrote that too. I had written it a few times already. There were strips of tape along the shelves. Facts. Salt in the blue jar. Phone is off. Generator fuel 2 cans. My handwriting wavered across each strip like it came through heat. When I read salt, the strip said salve. I blinked and it said salt again. Then the ink went wet and smeared down, like a tear. This was the end of it. I could feel the end. Behind my right ear, the skin was tender. It throbbed when I thought. I touched it and felt a hard line under the skin. Warm. That little knot had been my bright idea. That and the slide. That and the loop. I'm writing this because I made the thing that took me, even if I didn't mean to. Or I called it in. It didn't matter which anymore. I had been alone here for weeks. I liked it. No one came up the road. I had wires everywhere. Old prototypes. Little recorders. Labeled jars. Notebooks. The kind you buy in bulk. All black and all full. Coils. A makeshift rig I wore like a headband when I did trials. The bench was always sticky from tape and coffee. The generator rumbled under the floor and shook the cartoon magnet on the mini fridge. Nothing was clean except the slides. I wanted to hold a memory. That was the whole idea. Not just write it down. Hold it like a sample and point and say, "Here, this is that day." I had a culture dish with a thin net to grow a little neural mat on. Not much. Just enough to twitch when it saw a pattern. I fed it sugars and a bit of salt and kept it warm by a bare bulb. When I spoke into the mic, the little net twitched. I liked that. It meant it could echo something. I told myself I was close. The first day, I did a simple loop. My name, my city, my mother's name. I played it to the dish and watched the edges tremble. When I sat with the headband on and listened to the same loop, I felt the buzz behind my ear. Not pain. A warm prickle when a word hit. The recorder had a slider for levels. It went into the red when I said mother. I wrote that down. The ink was firm. I tested on myself because there was no one else. I had done worse with less sleep before. That's not bragging. That's just how I was. I strapped on the band and talked to the mic until my throat hurt. I filled tapes with simple lines. My name is, the date is, the blue jar has salt, little things. I set alarms for every hour to check that I still knew them. I laughed at myself out loud. I said, "You're losing it, old man." I remember I said that. It sounded like a joke then. The first thing that went missing was small. I had a note that said, "Right drawer, scalpel." When I opened the right drawer, there was a spoon. The label on the drawer said, "Spoon." My handwriting. I don't own spoons like that. I remember thinking someone was messing with me. Then I remembered no one comes here. I checked the logbook. I put a little camera on the desk for nights. In the morning I played the footage and it had gaps. The timestamp stuttered. I saw my own back bent over the bench. Then the tape jumped. When it came back, I was sitting in a different chair. My head was to the side and a bandage showed behind the ear. I rewind. I hit play. The gap was just gray blocks. Not black. Gray. Like a fog across the pixels. I put on the headphones and played my anchor loop. My name is... Then a hole. Empty. I stopped it. I rewound. The tape hissed in a way it hadn't before, like a quiet fire. I reversed the audio out of habit. It's a trick. Sometimes, if the recorder messes up, the backwards runs cleaner. I listened. A whisper bled through that hiss. It was my voice, but dragged. "The eater," it said. I took the phones off and set them down too fast. They slid and clacked and the left speaker popped. I said, "No." I don't know if I meant the name or the fact I heard my own voice say it. I checked my notebooks. There were pages cut clean, ripped out without tearing the binding. In the middle of a sentence, gone. In the margins I had written, "Stop pulling it through." I didn't remember writing that. I didn't remember pulling anything. There were little arrows to the word recall and underlines that got harder and harder until the paper scored and tore. One page said, "It eats recall," with all the words mashed together. I stared at that one too long and the ink went thin while I looked, as if the word recall didn't want to stay there. I blinked until my eyes hurt. I realized the slide wasn't just echoing me. It was waiting for me. Every time a detail slipped, it moved. I had the microscope on low power. The little mat looked like a lace of smoke. It sat still. Then I thought of the phone number to the nearest town. I always remembered that number. It kept me calm to have it. I reached for it in my head. I couldn't bring it up. The net under the lens pulled like a living eyelash dragged by a breath. I said into the mic, "Town number," and it pulled again. My hand shook on the fine focus. The net made a line and then loosened. It was thin. It was hungry. I stopped thinking of the number and it went still like nothing had happened. I told myself it was a coincidence. I knew it wasn't. I tried an alarm. I set the travel timer for 10 minutes and the stove timer for 10 minutes and my watch for 10 minutes. I put a sticky note on the cabinet that said, 10 minutes, check. I put one on my hand that said 10. I sat down. I said, "My name is Thomas." I said, "My mother's name is," and my mouth didn't make a sound. I felt my throat work. I felt the soft spot behind my ear jump like a heart. Screech! The timer on the stove went first. The travel timer still said 0:10. My watch beeped late. The sticky note on my hand said 10. I did not write that. I swallowed and it felt wrong. I looked at the microscope. The net twitched even though I was not trying to think. Then I realized thinking of trying was thinking. There was no way not to pull it. I tried blockers. I had them in a jar marked block. I had written a dosage on a tape beside it. The label said 2 tabs. When I looked back, it said 1 tab, then nothing. It was just blank tape stuck to glass. I took 2 because I remembered the first writing. Then I couldn't remember if I had taken any at all. I counted the tablets. My head hurt. I took 1 more. My stomach rolled and I spit bile into the sink. It tasted sour and metallic. I said, out loud, "Don't think. Don't think." That doesn't work. The tender spot behind my ear burned like a cigarette touch and then cooled. The logs were no better. The little recorder kept time, but the file names were wrong. I named one Anchor 3. It saved as Ancho, then A. Then it came back as Bench. When I clicked it, it played my own breathing. It played a voice that wasn't in the room saying, "My name is," and then a gap. I reversed it out of habit again. Eater. Every time. It wasn't clever. It wasn't even hiding. I got frantic. Practical. I wrote on my arms. I carved my initials into the desk corner and into the wood over the sink. I scraped old labels off jars and wrote simple words in block letters. Salt. Water. Fuel. Door. I set up 3 recorders and hit record on all. I taped my watch to the wall so I could not check my wrist and lose a second to that. I stuck a pin into the soft spot behind my ear. I just wanted to pin the pain. A line of red ran warm down my neck and I smelled iron. I cleaned it with alcohol and the label on the bottle said water. I put the bottle down and when I picked it back up, the label said alcohol again. My hands shook so hard the cap kept missing. I kept thinking of simple things and watching them get thin. My first teacher's face went white in my head and then slid away like chalk and rain. I stared at the slide and the net opened and closed in a slow pulse and then went still. When I tried to remember the smell of the cabin in winter, the net did nothing. When I tried to remember the exact place I put the spare keys, my jaw clenched and the net knotted hard. I told myself its rules. I spoke them into the mic because if I said them, maybe they would hold. It eats only recall, I said. It wakes when I chase. It grows when I call up old things. It follows the curve of the thing I reach for. I heard my voice say those words. I played them back and they were not there. There was a breath, a gap, a click. I reversed it and heard myself whisper, "It is not outside." I hated that. The headband had little coils in it that I had wrapped by hand from scrap. I thought if I could hit it with a shock when it reached, it would drop off. Like jolting a fish off a hook. I rigged a relay. The boards were messy. Wires hung. The solder lumps were dull from too many reheats. I cobbled a switch from an old foot pedal. I'd step and it would send a pulse. I fixed a lead near the tender spot. Tape and a smear of conductive paste. I saw my reflection in the dark window over the sink. My eyes were red. My mouth was chewed up on the inside. I looked like a thief. For the bait I chose, a face I knew I could find. A boy with a chipped tooth. My brother. We were dirt and cold and he grinned and blood shined on his lip. My chest hurt just saying the picture in my head. I said his name. I pressed the pedal. The room went white on the edges. The headphone static climbed to a knife whine. The relay snapped. Light on the coil burst, and then the smell of burnt dust filled everything. A capacitor shed its coat and popped like a nut in a fire. The tender spot jumped and then went numb. I yelled. The sound was small. The microscope lamp flickered and the net on the slide convulsed fast, like mosquito legs. My brother's name tore itself in my throat. It left nothing behind it. It felt like a word I knew from a language I don't speak. Smoke came up gentle from the board. The little board bowed in the middle like a bent toast crust. I pulled the plug and the generator coughed. The lights in the cabin dipped, then came back too bright. The red light on the recorder went steady, then blinked in a rhythm that had nothing to do with time. The clock stuttered. The one over the sink jumped to 12. The one by the bed lost its hands. I looked at my own notes and for a second they were someone else's. Left-handed. Taller letters. Then they were mine again, and thin. I had thought the shock would shake it. I had thought I could make it let go. It didn't. It learned. The intervals started to slide down to nothing. I set an alarm for 5 minutes and it went off as my thumb left the button. I wrote, "I am Thomas" on my left forearm and looked at it. When I looked again, it said "I am," and then bled into the lines in my skin. I printed my name on the door. You know how that went. I tried to stop thinking. I tried to hold only what is in front of me. Pen. Paper. The stain on the bench. The hum. The sear of the skin behind my ear. I tried not to turn anything into a picture in my head. That's hard. That's all the head does. The more I shut down the reach, the less it moved. The slide waited. I did not move. I did not blink. I failed. The little travel timer on the table hiccuped again, and I thought of the day I bought it at a drugstore and the word for that store slid, and the net twitched. I made a list of the things I regretted. I thought if I put them down, I wouldn't have to hold them in my head. The first line started, "I should not have used myself." The next said, "I should have called." The third said, "I should have waited a week." The rest of the page went white as I watched it. Like the paper exhaled. I touched the last word and it felt colder. The recordings kept lying. I said into one, "If this plays, it means I'm still here." On playback it said, "If this," and then a breathing in my ear that wasn't mine, and then a heavy step, like ice falling off a roof. I reversed it and heard my own voice cut up, bits of words that I knew had been whole. "It lives in recall, chopped and spaced as if someone had eaten between the syllables." I could not hate it for being what it was. It was doing what it did. That's not what makes me tired. What makes me tired is knowing I pulled it through. I had started by trying to hold a memory. I made a place for it. It came instead. I don't know if I birthed it in the dish or if I called it from somewhere we don't look at. The slide moved when I thought the deep thoughts and not for the shallow ones. That's the only rule that stayed. It ate the ones with heat. That is why I could pack a shelf full of jars and labels and lose none of them for a day. But if I thought of a laugh, it went. If I thought of a face, it went. If I thought of my father saying my name by the lake, the sound thinned and broke and would not come back, and the slide danced. I ran out of moves. I had tried the loop. I had tried the shock. I had tried the pills. I had tried writing on skin and on wood. I had tried to lock my jaw and never say anything and never chase anything and let the hours be only what I could see. The clocks made a joke of that. The labels made a joke of that. The notes were not notes anymore. They were air. This is the last thing I could still do. I could put this down once. I could say how to see it if it comes to you. Do not chase it. Do not chase anything. Do not sit with a microscope and think you can put your mind on a dish. Do not talk into a recorder and trust that the future can hold your voice. If you feel a spot behind your ear go warm when you remember something you don't need to, stop. If your clocks do not agree and your labels slide and your tapes breathe, stop. Leave the cabin. Leave the bench. Leave the idea. You cannot win a pull with something that is only pull. I am past the end of this. It had found where I live. It lived inside the act that made me me. Recall. I had said that out loud. I write it again so I can see it. It lives inside recall. When I tried to recall my address, it ate the number. When I tried to recall my brother's name, it ate his face. When I tried to recall what I was before I came up here, it ate that too. All that was left was this cabin and this humming and this soft spot that knocks like a finger on the skull. I am tired. The generator is low. The last spool of solder is soft. The boards are blackened spots. The left ear of the headphones is dead. The right ear hisses when I touch the plug. The little red light on the recorder blinks, but not like a heartbeat. The travel timer still says 0:10 unless I look straight at it, and then it hiccups. The labels intend nothing. The jar that had salt has water. It does not matter. I had one more idea. It was bad. I know that. I wanted to cut the spot and see. I got the scalpel from the right drawer. It was there again. My hand shook. I pressed the edge into the skin behind my ear until the burn became a wet cold. Blood went down my neck. It wasn't much. It soaked into my collar. I felt with a gloved finger for something that was not me. There was only me. There was only skin and the little lead and the tape, and then nothing to hook. My stomach turned over and I put the scalpel down. If it lives in recall, cutting meat will do nothing. I said that out loud so I would stop. I cleaned the cut with alcohol. The label said water. The smell said alcohol. I laughed and then put my hand to my mouth because the laugh felt like a hook in my throat. The slide under the lens twitched hard. I did not look into the scope. I did not dare put my eye to the glass and think any picture. I wiped my hand and sat down. I wrote this. The first lines faded while I wrote the last. That's fine. It wanted me to chase what I already wrote, and I didn't. I let it go. If anyone finds this, your name will not fade just because you read mine. It needs you to pull. Don't pull. I can feel the end because the small things are going now. The names for tools. The word for the little metal thing that goes pop on a board. I had it a minute ago. It's gone. The soft spot behind my ear is cool now. That scares me more than the heat did. The phones are in my lap. They hiss. The hiss sounds like someone drawing air between teeth. The generator dips and the light over the sink flickers out of rhythm with the red blink on the recorder. I know death was already here. It came in small bites each time I looked back at anything. It is not a person. There is no figure at the window. There is only the feeling I had when I tried to bring up my own name and my mouth made shape and no sound came. That is enough to finish a man. The last thing I could hold was the slide. The little net. It moved like a slow eel when I thought of a face. It froze when I stared at the crack in the bench. I'll leave that. The light here is bad now. The red light blinks. Blink, blink. Wrong. The headphones hiss in my right ear. There's a breath behind my ear that is only mine and not mine. And on the slide, when I try to say anything in my head, the thin lace lifts and lays down, lifts and lays, like a hand saying shh. Maya bone. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It really helps the channel. And if you're not too scared yet, check out one of the other stories waiting for you. See you in the next one.